So what does the Bible teach about sex during fasting? 1 Corinthians 7 verse 5 says, "Do not deprive one another except with consent for a time, that you may give yourselves to fasting and prayer and come together again, so that Satan does not tempt you because of your lack of self-control." Oftentimes the scripture has been quoted as to endorse or support the idea that because the husband's body belongs to the wife and the wife's body to the husband, you are allowed to have sex during fasting, especially in the case where one partner is fasting. But that is not true. What the scripture is rather teaching is that you are not supposed to have sex during fasting, because he says, "Do not deprive one another," meaning you should never deny your partner except for the condition where you need to give yourself over to fasting and prayer, but you do that with the consent of your partner for a time. So those are the two conditions. Now we need to understand consent does not mean permission, because we think it means you need the permission of your spouse. No, consent means I am informing you so that you agree with me, because basically when you come to your partner, you're saying, hey, God has called me to a meeting with him and I'm required to keep myself away so that I can really make the most of that meeting with him. And so therefore, for this number of days, a given time, it says we are not going to have to meet together. So that is what the whole idea of consent is. And your partner has the obligation to consent to what you're consenting to, because just as much as you own each other's bodies, God owns the both of you. Because God can't inform you that he needs your partner's body for a while and you oppose. With what authority exactly? Secondly, for a time means for a limited period of time that is long enough for the person to accomplish the purpose for which they're fasting, but not too long to expose the relationship or one partner to unnecessary temptation. But we must remember that this is just a caution. It's not a law or an obligation, because each marriage is different. For a time, for some people can be a day, a couple of days, a week, 2 weeks. So you have to let the Spirit of God guide you and direct you on what that length of time actually is. So it's not because God has said that you need to cut the fasting after a time so that you can quickly meet together again to avoid temptation. That automatically means you have to do that unless you're actually facing the temptation. So this last line is more like a fire extinguisher in a building. That you bought an extinguisher doesn't mean you expect to set the building on fire. It could happen that the building never has a fire incident, but the fire extinguishers are there just in case. So when God is saying that you should deprive yourself for a while, but then you should quickly come back together, he's saying just in case you have trouble with self-control. But if that is not the case, especially when both partners are actually engaged in the fasting, then there is really no room to use that particular scripture as an excuse to say you're allowed to have sex during prayer and fasting. So no, 1 Corinthians 7 verse 5 is not a tolerance or a liberty to give spouses control over each other's body. Rather, it's the opposite. It's telling you that you have to be willing to let the other partner be handed over to God and God's ministry for a while. And consent, remember, is not permission. Consent is mutual agreement, because both of you are under the higher authority, which is God. And one more evidence to show that this scripture is actually being abused today is that it was talking to both the husband and the wife. That is why it says to give yourselves to fasting and prayer, which is precisely why he used the word consent instead of permission or authorization, because we both are entering into this and we both agree that one of the sacrifices we'll have to make is sexual intercourse. Probably because the apostle generally assumed reasonably that a strong and healthy couple should engage in spiritual exercises together. However, I must remind us that as much as consent is not permission or authority, it doesn't still give one partner the room to use these as an excuse to abuse or deprive the other partner for as long as they think the while is for them in the name that they are fasting. Because if you're fasting for the wrong reason and wrong motive, you might as well just come clean and make it clear that you're just trying to abuse your partner. We must remember the definition of fasting, which is actually putting aside pleasures and suppressing the flesh so that we can submit ourselves, body, soul, and spirit, over to God. And sex is just another one in the many pleasures that we have to sacrifice and give out so that we can be fully submitted to God. Though it may be something that is both physical and spiritual, the aspect that we are giving up here is the physical aspect, which entails the pleasure and satisfaction. So that's it for this video. Let me know what you think about this. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Please share your thoughts on this topic in the comments below. A big thank you to our Patreons for helping us create content like this. You too can support this channel. The link is down below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're new to the channel so you don't miss any other video. I'm Buddha's Jumesi from Wisdom for Dominion. Thank you for watching, and until the next video, stay blessed.